You can put the poster. ठीक है. हाँ, that will be better. Photos वगैरह सब उस पर हैं. Thank you. Absolutely. जल्दी से काटो, थाली पर नीचे आ रही.
Hi, Jamal Mamu.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Am I clear? Audible?
I.
Is it better now?
It's slightly muffled.
Okay. Where are you?
I'm in Delhi only, Jamal Mamu.
Delhi or where are you?
I can't hear you, Jamal Mamu.
Is it better now?
Much better. Much better.
Okay. Yeah, because I was always worried with audio and camera together. But ठीक है, साफ आ रही है आवाज, हाँ? Good. I'll just be back.
Hello, hi, this is Tasveer. Should I let other people, like Dr. Rosie is also here, everybody else who is speaking, should I let all of them in?
Yes, I think you can.
Dr. Rosie is joining now. I can't see Sophia or Anand as of yet.
Hi, Dr. Llewellyn Jones. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good. Okay, that's the main thing.
Hello, Professor Jones. I'm Jamal. We've met in Lucknow a couple of times.
I remember. I'm delighted to see everyone again. I really am.
Yeah, so nice to see you. Hope to meet you again soon in Lucknow.
Yes, in person.
Yeah.
Are you planning to visit Lucknow anytime soon, Doctor?
Well, I certainly want to early next year, and I think everything should be all right for that. And then I'll probably lead a tour next autumn. But no, it's been too long, really.
Yes, it has been.
How many people are you expecting to watch this? Have you got any idea?
I don't actually. I don't know how many people have signed up.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, hello. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Hi, we can.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Say hello, hello.
Waving.
Hi, Vivi.
Hi, Nimra. I'm waving. How to
अच्छा,
you
थोड़ा सा
cannot
ऐसे।
use.
I can just see the tips of your fingers.
Now can you see me whole?
I can see you. Yes.
Acha, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
That was the problem. Acha, there's Rose.
मीटिंग जब शुरू करेंगे 7:30 बजे तब तो वक्त से होगा सब कुछ मुझे लग रहा है वेरी फ्यू पीपल विल जॉइन इन टाइम सम पीपल विल वॉच इट
Shruti Khala, keep your
Yes, I think you'll have to mute.
mute. Only open it when mute कर लीजिए अपना Shruti Khala.
अच्छा,
हाँ, क्योंकि सब पीछे से आवाज आ रही है.
mute कर दो मेरा.
हाँ, make sure you guys are on mute before. Now we can't hear you because you are on mute. So keep yourself on mute. Only speak when your turn comes. But I mean that's the rule. You can speak now. I think बात कर सकते हैं. Anant, you went and came back without any problem, you guys, to Lucknow. Hi, Amit. Can you hear us?
Hi, Jamal.
क्या हाल है?
बिल्कुल ठीक.
Nice to have you over here. This is very nice.
Yeah, very happy to be here.
तुम दिल्ली में ही हो?
हाँ.
Good.
हाँ. तुम कहाँ हो?
I am here. I am very much here in Delhi. I
Oh,
thought
okay.
I'd go to Lucknow, but I
Okay.
travel. हम लोग का मिलना ड्यू है. We should meet in Lucknow. प्लान करते रहते हैं.
Hi, everyone. Yes, you are audible, Mama. Yeah, great. I'll mute myself. Yes, yeah, perfect.
I think people have come. 1 or 2 people are saying let them in. Is there a thing where you? It's not open for everyone yet.
Yes, Jamal. Jamal sir, so I was trying to add everybody who's speaking. I can't see Mukul sir yet.
Okay.
So anytime we're ready, I think I'll just let everybody in and we should start. And whenever rest of the people will join, I'll put them on highlight for everybody, spotlight for everybody.
Do you
Is
want?
Sumita here?
Yep. Adding her in right now.
Maybe तुम सबको. Maybe you should invite every. Because people are saying they may just drop out. It's already 7:35, so that's why. बार-बार लोग मैसेज कर रहे हैं कि is it starting or is it?
So I'll let everybody in now.
Yeah, I think you should.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I'm putting Jamal sir on spotlight for everybody and letting everybody in.
कर रहा थे कल इंटरव्यू सुबह जाना है मुझे.
क्या कर रही हो? नहीं वो देख रहे हैं. नहीं हाँ बताओ.
चलता है भाई, ये थोड़े उसको.
Hello everyone. I just request all our friends to put their mic on mute. That would be just a request so that there is no disturbance.
कर दिया
जी.
This is your mic.
Yeah.
Remember being this big.
So, hello everyone. Madhvi, should we start because we have very limited time and there are lots of speakers. ठीक है. I am. Yeah. Please, I once again request everyone to mute themselves before we begin. Otherwise, there will be a lot of disturbance if you don't mute yourself. And so hello everyone. My name is Jamal Kidwai, and I have known many of you may not have met me, so I'm introducing myself. I have grown up with Saleem, and since Saleem shifted to Lucknow, तो हमारा भी रिश्ता लखनऊ से बहुत गहरा हो गया, और सलीम की दोस्तों से हमारी भी दोस्तियां हो गई। तो जो आज का पूरा मौजू है सलीम इन लखनऊ एंड लखनऊ का सलीम, माधवी का हुक्म था कि मैं आज का प्रोग्राम मॉडरेट करूं। दोस्तों, ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ सनत कदा, लखनऊ बायोस्कोप, फ्रेंड्स एंड फैमिली ऑफ सलीम इन लखनऊ, एक्चुअली फ्रेंड्स उनके फैमिली बन गए थे और फैमिली उनके फ्रेंड्स बन गए थे, तो इट्स द सेम थिंग। आई वेलकम यू ऑल टू दिस मेमोरियल, कहिए इसको, इनफैक्ट वी शुड से वी आर सेलिब्रेटिंग सलीम टुडे। एंड जैसे आप लोगों को मालूम होगा, आज ही के दिन 1 साल पहले सलीम हम लोगों को फिजिकली हम लोगों को छोड़ के चले गए, मगर हम लोगों के साथ है, जैसा आप लोग जानते हैं, उनका पूरा काम, उनकी पूरी यादें। तो हम लोगों ने सोचा कि सलीम को, लखनऊ वालों को लखनऊ सेलिब्रेट करना चाहिए। और पिछले 1 साल में सलीम के चाहने वालों ने बहुत से मजमून लिखे न्यूज़पेपर्स में उनकी याद में। लॉट ऑफ पीपल, some people made a film. There were programs held in Delhi and Bombay and Bangalore, and what I am told is कि बहुत से लोग जो उन programs जिन्होंने attend किए, तो ज़्यादातर लोग ऐसे थे कि जो सलीम को नहीं जानते थे, मगर सलीम के काम से वाकिफ थे और सलीम एज एन इंस्पिरेशन को चाहते थे। तो लखनऊ वाले जो हम सब हैं, it took us a lot of time to actually digest कि सलीम हम लोगों के बीच में इस तरह से फिजिकली नहीं है, तो लखनऊ में उस तरह से कोई सलीम की याद में या सलीम को सेलिब्रेट करने के लिए कोई उस तरह से प्रोग्राम नहीं हुआ। तो आज हम लोगों ने सोचा, आज ऐसा दिन है कि सलीम को हम लोग फिर से सलीम का जश्न मनाएं, उनको सेलिब्रेट करें, उनको याद करें। तो सब दोस्तों, आज बहुत लंबी फहरिस्त है जो लोग सलीम को याद करना चाहते हैं, जो सलीम के बारे में बोलना चाहते हैं। मैं आप लोगों का ज़्यादा वक्त नहीं लूँगा, मगर ये कि बहुत जल्दी से आप लोगों को मैं ये आज कोशिश करूँगा बताने की, जो फहरिस्त है आज की, कौन किस वक्त बोलेगा। उसके बाद सबका तारुफ में एक लाइन में सारे स्पीकर्स का जैसे जैसे जिसका टर्न आएगी मैं उनका कराऊँगा। तो आज का प्रोग्राम हम लोग शुरू करेंगे सूफिया किदवाई, जो सलीम की बहन है, वो सलीम के कुछ पिक्चर्स आपके साथ शेयर करेंगी और उनकी जो यादें हैं लखनऊ की वो शेयर करेंगी। उसके बाद सुनीता थापर हमारी दोस्त हैं, वो सलीम का एक पैसेज पढ़ेंगी, माय लखनऊ। उन्होंने लिखा था एक किताब में, लखनऊ सिटी बिटवीन कल्चर्स। उसके बाद रोजी लेब्रिन जोन्स जो स्कॉलर हैं और जिमरा रिजवी आपस में गुफ्तगू करेंगी। ये सब सलीम की याद करते हुए और सलीम के बारे में, उनके जो पूरा रिश्ते थे, उनकी जो इंटरेक्शन हुआ उसके बारे में है। उसके बाद सलीम का जो रामजस में वक्फा गुजरा बहुत लंबा, उसमें मुकुल और अमित बरुआ, मुकुल मांगलिक और अमित बरुआ हैं, वो आपस में वो सलीम के रामजस के बारे में और वगैरह चीज़ें याद करेंगे। ट्रांसलेशन सलीम ने बहुत सारे किए और बहुत उनकी आखिरी ज़िंदगी में बहुत वो इन्वॉल्व थे ट्रांसलेशन में। तो फातिमा रिजवी और सूफिया किदवाई उस पर थोड़ी चर्चा करेंगे। और फिर सलीम का, जैसे आप सब जानते हैं कि बेगम अख्तर से बहुत गहरा रिश्ता था। सलीम ने शायद कहीं कहा कि जैसे एक औरत जिससे उन्होंने मोहब्बत सचमुच की वो बेगम अख्तर थी। तो कालिदास स्वामीनाथन काली जो हमारे दोस्त हैं, और सपा दीवान जो फिल्म मेकर हैं और ऑथर हैं, वो थोड़ा बेगम अख्तर और सलीम की बाकी जो इंटरेस्ट थे कल्चर में और म्यूजिक में, उस पर बातचीत करेंगे। ऋत्विक दास एक नए हम लोगों के हमारे साथी हैं, यंग साथी हैं, जो सलीम का जो पूरा क्वेयर एक्टिविज्म था और इंस्पिरेशन था लखनऊ में, उस पर थोड़ी बात करेंगे। और फिर फाइनली सलीम और सनत रजा, जो कि सलीम का बहुत पिछले कई सालों में सलीम को दोस्ती, और फिर सनत रजा और उनकी टीम से माधवी और नसरीन सनत रजा और सलीम के बारे में बात करेंगे। तो मैं अब आपसे ज़्यादा वक्त नहीं लूँगा। बाद में हम लोग कोशिश करेंगे, मेरी सबसे गुजारिश होगी कि सब लोग थोड़ा थोड़ा बोले, जो उनका वक्फा है, जो टाइम दिया गया है, क्योंकि बहुत से लोग हैं, सबको मौका मिले वो बाद में थोड़े सवाल और कमेंट्स, और जो साथी ऑडियंस में वो अगर कुछ कहना चाहें तो वो जरूर कहें। तो मैं जल्दी से सूफिया किदवाई को इनवाइट करता हूँ कि वो अपना पहला लाइफ टाइम ऑफ लखनऊ सलीम के बारे में रखें। सूफिया किदवाई।
सलीम, जिनको हम आदतन सल्लू कहते हैं, आई कॉल हिम सल्लू बिकॉज वी आर ऑल यूज्ड टू कॉलिंग हिम दैट. He left behind a huge carton of photographs, so I had a problem choosing a few out of those to tell you all about various parts of his life, some that he spent as a child in Lucknow, and very fond of pets, and dogs were always there.
Can you request Tasveer to?
I request Tasveer to please show the photographs of Saleem with his pets.
Start sequentially, actually.
So this is me and Saleem. I don't remember where and when. I think it was in Barabanki when we had gone for our vacations. Salu always looking frightened and timid. And this was us in the house that we lived in Ghai Lane. This was on the terrace, and Saleem and a cousin of mine, Irfan, standing next to him, were, you know, what they were up to when they were called up for this photograph, and he just came and he stood as he was, not at all conscious of his looks as he was afterwards. Totally. This is the house we lived in on Shah Najaf Road, and we have a lot of memories of this house. Even when he had left for Delhi, he would come for the holidays, and there we would then have a house full with the children and my sisters, but he was mostly confined to the house. This is him with his cousins in Badagaon. This is Saleem, and he was with these cousins. Then it was very seldom that he went around with these cousins of his age, because it was only during the summer holidays that they met. And Badagaon is our ancestral village where he now lies in eternal sleep. This is where he used to go during the holidays, but it was only for a very short time until he left for Delhi that this was a regular practice. After that, he stopped going to Badagaon. This was his school uniform. He had at one time become very fond of getting himself photographed, and he had a few photographs taken, and this was when he returned. He one in his school uniform, St. Francis School, which was just across the road from where we lived. And that day I remembered he changed several times to get himself photographed. So this was one of them. And he had just started wearing specs, so he wanted to show them off to me. This was Much later, when he had become quite a gentleman, had not lost his hair, he had left for Delhi to study in St. Stephen's College. He studied, he was admitted in St. Stephen's College, and he went very reluctantly because he thought that this had been manipulated his admission, so he refused to go. But then he was called to be shown the list, admission list, where he did see his name. Then he agreed to stay. But he had left home for the first time. This is my sister Azra, whose marriage was a very painful time for Saleem because he couldn't think of her leaving the house and going away. And she had assured him that once I go, I'll call you to Delhi too, which she did. And this is all practice photography that was going on. So we were constantly playing with the camera. He had got a new one. So he was constantly busy taking photographs or getting photographed himself. This is just when he went to Delhi to join St. Stephen's College. And the first time he had left home, so immediately he fell very ill. He was brought back to Lucknow, and my father refused to send him back for fear of his falling ill again. But as my sister had promised, she saw to it that he went back, joined St. Stephen's to become an absolutely different man, different from what he was in childhood. This is him causing trouble for Baji and more for Bua. Bua, who is the lady who looked after us, brought us up. And yes, that is Bua. And this is Jamal hiding there because Saleem had shared his plans with Jamal. So he's sitting there anxiously waiting to see what happens, whether Baji is able to make the halwa she was making or not. So this is my mother's governess, who taught my mother when she was a child and thereafter lived with her and with us until she passed away on a day or two before Jamal was born. So this is Granny. And now it is close to Baji's wedding, so Salu is hardly able to leave her. Lots of pictures he had taken with Baji because she was about to get married and go away. At the time of marriage, he created such a racket, howling away because she was going.
Tasveer, can I ask you to go to the next photograph because I'm having trouble toggling?
This is the year he passed his MA. He completed MA and he got a job too at Ramjas College in 1971. And this is he had joined Nehru University for his MPhil before he went to Canada. He went to Canada in 1976, so he spent some time in Nehru University doing some. I think he spent 2 years in Nehru University before he. Then after that, in 76, he went off to Canada. And for 2 or 3 years, we were out of touch physically. This is Salu's obsession with his nephew, whose photograph he clicked at every twist and turn. So this is Jamal.
Please, can I request people to mute themselves? Hello, can I request people to mute? Yeah. Hello. Yeah, you can carry on. Anand, we can unmute yourself.
Innumerable pictures of Jamal from the time he was born till the time Saleem left for Delhi, for Canada. He was always clicking photographs.
Next.
And Jamal was, and to the last, his favorite nephew. This he's very fond of the children. This is Tabassum Paro, who was a favorite. She was the only girl amongst boys. So that was another reason why he was so fond of her, because she was the only one who was within his control. The others, the boys, he had some difficulty in controlling. This is again Tabassum and him. This is the Farhan. Is the next Jamal's same age as Jamal, and he enjoyed creating trouble between them. And then there would be battle royal. This is the next one, Saif, who as a child, as a little one, as a toddler, spent very little time with him, because when he was, so this is soon after he was born, Saleem went away to Canada. So they spent very little time together. This is a photograph he had posed for, thinking that it was him who was being photographed with his nephews, trying to teach them something, and nobody else was in the frame. And I slipped in from the door at the back and sat there. He was awfully upset and irritated that the picture had been spoiled. Again, Farhan and Saleem, who are busy talking away. There are lots of him showing all kinds of styles which became absent during the latest days of his life. This is, he was very fond of dogs. So this was a greyhound we had, who he had taken to a dog show and won a prize. And we lost this dog because she ran away. And these are his last favorites, especially Pugly, at whose death he wept.
So
his two favorite dogs, Kabuli and Pugly. Kabuli he brought from Jaipur in a taxi to Lucknow, in his lap all the way. It's his favorite Pugly, who made him weep for a couple of days when she died. Yeah, he's at the dog show and his dog is being examined. This was a Glenn, who had been brought for him from Karachi. And Glenn also won a prize. This is our latest Kaga, whom he called. He wanted to name him Kawa, but everybody disagreed, especially my ladies who work for us and the boy who worked for him. They said, please change his name. So he said, okay, we'll call him Kaga. So that sounds more respectable, I think. We still have him. He had also his great love for baking. He would find recipes and he'd cook and bake. And these cakes, he baked very often. And once he made a mistake of putting mustard oil into the cake instead of the oil that he used to use, because he didn't know the difference. And Jamal, as usual, with him all the time, both trying to cook something. These are now the grandchildren. Saif's children, who were his favorites again, and so was he theirs. And it's Farhan and his family. This is Tahir, this is Zoya, their mother Farah and Farhan. Here are all the 4 grandchildren. They called him Dana, because Sallu happened to be the Nana also in relationship to Kabir and Imad. And these other 2, Tahir and Zoya, called him Mamma Dada because he was their father's mom. He was Mamma Dada, but Zoya and Tahir he took them to the this thing for their haircut, and he was extremely thrilled because both of them were sitting there and wanting different styles. And here is Himad with a strange hairstyle that he came back with. And after that, whenever he went, he was asked by those boys there that why haven't the Babas come? So this is the first and the last time they went with him for the haircut. This is our house on Shanajaf. No, this is the house where we live now. This is Mahanagar. Because he was very particular about Diwali, that the house we lit up. And this picture of the garden that he took, he stood at the window of his bathroom and took these photographs. He would look at the garden from there and give instructions to the Mali about what should be done in the garden from his bathroom window. This is one of the programs and one with one group of his friends. There were umpteen groups. I could only pick up one picture to put there. And this is one of the Eid photographs. And this is his friend Aman Nath, who runs those Nimrana hotels. He had gone there to do some work for him. So this is at Nimrana in Ramgarh. And this lady I don't recognize. These are his later friends. So as a child, he hardly had any friends. I don't remember any friend coming to the house except a few cousins with whom he exchanged he spent some time. This is Malika Pukhraj, whom he went to meet with a book on Begum Akhtar in mind. He thought he'd meet her and get to know some things, but instead she handed him her memoirs and told him to translate those. So that's what he did, and that came out as a book, Song Sung True. This is all four of us on Eid, which we spent in Delhi all together. The last Eid that all four of us spent together. So the three sisters and him.
Thank you. And
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I had a difficulty in choosing the photographs, but I did just as I could.
Okay, thank you, Sophia Sotikala. I will now, these were very moving pictures. Actually, I hadn't seen many of them. Many of us haven't seen these. I asked Sumita Thapar, please read the excerpt from Saleem's essay, My Lucknow. Sumita.
Hello, everyone. So, firstly, thanks, Supiappa. Those photos were so lovely, really lovely. Such a joy to see these photos. So, we actually chose this book. And it has an essay by Saleem on returning to Lucknow. And I'm just going to be reading out some excerpts from that essay. My Lucknow, Saleem Kidwai. I left Lucknow in 1968 to go to college in Delhi, believing that I was severing my connection with the city. I used to return regularly for vacations, but gradually the visits became briefer and seemed to coincide mostly with weddings or funerals, which, given that I was part of multiple extended families, were many. I saw little of the city and had no friends in it except those who lived in Delhi like me. What struck me on these visits was the rot, not decay. I returned 35 years later to live here again in the town I was born, but not in my old home, hoping that this address would now never change. Delhi had become home, but an increasingly uncomfortable one. Mercifully, there was another home from which my umbilical cord had never been completely severed. Our old home in Lucknow had been a busy and a crowded one. Relatives frequently came to visit and others to live with us in order to go to school or college. We used to live on the edge of Hazratganj. I knew where to get what I needed. I could walk to 6 of the best movie halls, and the other 3 were an easy rickshaw or bicycle ride away. The British Council Library was less than a 10-minute walk. I had gotten membership without sponsors or a deposit by simply filling a form and showing my school identity card. The American Information Center was a bit further. In the same building as the BCL were 2 of my favorite haunts, the Mayfair Cinema and Ram Advani booksellers. Also in the same building was a place I would have loved to go more often, the Kidwai restaurant, famous for its ice creams and pastries, the fanciest restaurant of the time. I distinctly remember my first impressions of the place. Regular, discreet tip-tap of cutlery hitting china and the discreet hum of genteel conversation. Across the road was the almost as posh Royal Cafe. The libraries and the cinema halls were once the only places I spent time in, which were air-conditioned. Close by was Ranjana Cafe, where I must have had my first 100-odd dosas. Ranjana has been replaced by Barista. Royal Cafe has moved location but has an elaborate chart stall outside its entrance and serves most of its patrons on the sidewalk. I rarely went to the legendary Indian coffee house at one end of Hazratganj, which also has a chart stall at its entrance. Kidwai, Mayfair, and the British and American libraries have gone. The only survivor is the bookshop, and Ram Advani continues to zealously interact with anyone interested in books. My family was religious, but religion was confined to the home. I never had a close friend who was Muslim. My father had numerous close friends who were not Muslims. I don't ever recall them discussing their own or the other's religion. Special care was taken never to be disrespectful to anyone's sensitivities. We always lived surrounded by non-Muslims. If we refer to neighbors in generic terms, it was as Bengali, Punjabi, Madrasi, Kashmiri, and so on. And in the case of Christians, as Angrez if they were fair, and Anglo-Indians if they were not. I learned much later that one of my father's close friends was Jewish. This was a revelation, for he was the only Indian Jew that I have known. I asked my mother why she had not told me this. What was there to tell? She answered. I tried to recall any Hindu-Muslim divide in my world then, but failed to. Things seemed to change drastically in the middle years of my absence. I remember suddenly feeling afraid of traveling on the Lucknow Mail, boxed in close to belligerent groups of saffron bandana anointed karsevaks. Their threat was palpable, and one tried to become invisible. Some relatives made train reservations using Hindu names, and a female relative wore a bindi for extra protection. I learned not to react when referred to as Babar ki aulad, but despaired at how the heritage of Lucknow was not just being shredded, but also mocked. How the idea of Awadh had to be destroyed before a political party could rule India. Today, I can't help but contrast that feeling of fear with the overt assertion of identity when I see an increasing number of people across the city who can be recognized as being Muslim from the way they dress. I now live in Mahanagar across the Gomti from Hazratganj. Mahanagar was the first ambitious urban colonization taken by the government after independence. Again, I find myself living in the middle of the city, although the city seems 100 times larger. New Lucknow has mushroomed all around me. Derivative and glitzy, it is not the city I knew. I am often rudely reminded of how it has changed. But soon enough, I am reassured that in many ways it hasn't, and that one better be grateful for it. There is the lilt of the language and the polite phrases one begins to hear when one boards the Shatabdi. Lucknow is still a city where people prefer to be polite and courteous and don't believe that rudeness is the best way to get things done. Thank you. Jamal, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Shubhita. Uh, this was very nice and all everything with Saleem. Thank you for this. Now I invite Nimra and Rosie Levin-John. Rosie is an old friend of Saleem and a very renowned scholar, celebrated scholar. I mean, she's written numerous books and articles, and her latest book on Wajid Ali Shah is fabulous. Those who want to know Lucknow, and I mean, the list is one can go on and on. And Nimra is a young scholar. She is, I think, done her PhD from JNU recently, and also happens to be a grandniece of Saleem. She worked very closely with Saleem, especially during the Sanat Prada festival times. So yeah, over to you, Nimra.
Thank you so much, Jamal Mamu. I'll start this little session by quoting Saleem. So in an interview on Begum Akhtar, Saleem said, "How do you mourn someone you love? You start collecting everything about her." Dr. Llewellyn Jones and I have spent the last couple of days poring over a few of Saleem's interventions in historical research and writing, and the many Lucknows he encountered during his life impacted his work quite significantly. His own interaction with the city and its institutions shaped his research questions, and a lot of his work grappled with the historical and cultural significance of each milieu he encountered. A large part of his research delved into the lives of women from the margins, whose contributions were often mocked, if not erased. From his earliest essay on Begum Samru, and then to Malka Pukhraj and Begum Akhtar, and also Mayawati in the essay Sumita was just reading out, assertions of and struggles for power in changing socio-political contexts informed his areas of interest. Saleem was as much of a historian of contemporary India as he was of medieval India, where his writings on Lucknow captured the city through its representation in film, fiction, archival sources, as well as oral histories. Saleem had the ability to expand the scope of sources in historical research and look at intersections among various representations of Lucknow. Saleem also was interested in the urban history of Lucknow, and we all know that nothing excited him more than a new ghastly house in the city. His essays on Lucknow bore a lot of visual detail of the city, its landmarks, architectural marvels, as well as disasters. Again, I'm going to have to point you to the thoughts Saleem had on Saharaganj in the essay that Sumita just read from. He worked with Dr. Llewellyn Jones on a book on Hazratganj, a locality that he encountered repeatedly in very different capacities through his time in Lucknow. Dr. Llewellyn Jones, tell us how you met Saleem and how did the idea of this book come along?
I must say, looking at those old photographs, it brought back to me what a lovely man he was. I felt very, very nostalgic to see them. My memories of Saleem are actually quite late. I didn't meet him until he came back. He retired from teaching in Delhi, and it must have been in the 1990s that I first met him, and I really didn't know anything about his reputation. I'm really glad to see this picture. It's one of my favorites. It's Saleem and Pratik Hira at my birthday party, one of my birthday parties in the golf club. It's a lovely memory, and you just have to look at Saleem to remember what a nice man he was, what a kind man he was. So, as I say, I met him when he came back from Delhi. He'd retired, and because I knew Ram Advani, this was how I actually got to know Saleem. And I remember Ram had great hopes that Saleem would actually take over the bookshop as a manager. And unfortunately for Ram, he chose not, Saleem chose not to do that. But nevertheless, the bookshop was somewhere where we used to meet, and we enjoyed each other's company tremendously. I know Saleem really only as a historian, apart from as a friend. And Nimra mentioned the Hazratganj book. I've got a copy here. There we are. Hazrat Ganj, A Journey Through the Times. And this was an interesting one. I'm actually down as the editor and Saleem is the co-editor, but it should have been the other way around. We were commissioned to write this book, and it may seem strange to have a whole book about one street, Hazrat Ganj, but in fact, by the time we'd finished, we were looking at buildings around the street. We were looking particularly at personalities, and Saleem chose to write about the civil lines, and he was looking at what happened when the British moved in to Lucknow after 1858. And it was very, very interesting the way he tackled it. He looked, for example, at roads which were named by the British and how obviously they've now been renamed again. And it was quite an interesting take on how the British deliberately chose to move into the center of Lucknow to stamp their impression on it, if you like, as the new administrators. So that was interesting. And also looking through it again this morning, Saleem interviewed a number of people for the book, and these were very informal interviews. He got people to talk about themselves. And one of the people he interviewed was, of course, Ramadvani. And I remember that there were some problems with this book. I think a number of them was the fact that I, as a foreigner, had been asked to edit the book. And Saleem did send out little warnings saying, I think we need to move quite quickly on finishing the book because voices are being raised. He was very sensitive like that, things that I, as a foreigner coming to Lucknow fairly frequently, couldn't actually pick up. And that was one of his main features, I think, sensitive to what was going on, whether it was good or bad, but just picking up things. And one of the last things Saleem did for me, actually, was to act as a sensitivity reader. This is something the Americans are very keen on. If you write a book, you have to put it past a sensitivity reader in case you're offending anyone. Obviously, Saleem was a perfect person to do this. And this was the book, Amma and the Silk-Winged Pigeon. It was by a Canadian author living in the States, Jocelyn Cullity. And I came to know her because she wanted some factual
He was a
information.
big-time academic. He used to teach at Delhi University.
Sorry? Right, okay, sorry. And what Saleem wrote about this, it's actually a book, a novel, one of the slaves of Begum Hazrat Mahal, in fact, an African woman slave. And we know that Hazrat Mahal did have a number of Black women looking after her. So what Saleem wrote about it, Jocelyn Cullity's literary novel, aims to address the absence of women's voices at a key historical moment in India, focusing on Indian women's perspectives through the eyes of a Begum, a slave, and a group of courtesans during the 1857 resistance to English rule in Lucknow. This book is a must-read, and nobody could have been better than Saleem to act as a sensitivity reader. And this is really how I want to remember him. He was so kind. Whenever I lectured at Summit Qadr, he would actually chair the lecture and we would share the platform together. I never felt nervous. I felt confident and happy with him. I can't unfortunately stay for much longer for this session, but a good friend, a dear friend, that's really all I can say. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. One last question before we close this segment. The idea of a city has informed your work very largely and Saleem's as well to a very large extent. What is the idea or what is the value of understanding space as a city in the craft of a historian?
That's a difficult one to answer. I can only really speak as a historian, but I know that Saleem saw it in many different ways. He wasn't always particularly happy with Lucknow, but it was his home. And I think if you read some of his writings, there was a sense of uneasiness, certainly during certain times. I think when Mayawati was in charge, he was very unhappy about what was going on the outskirts of Lucknow. But I like to remember his house in Mahanagar as a place of warmth and hospitality. That's my abiding memory. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Llewellyn Jones. I know you've had a very tight schedule. Over to you, Jamal Mama.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Rosie and Professor Rosie and Nimra. Now I invite, just 1 second. Let me just, it's Mukul Manglik and Amit Barua. Amit and Mukul both were associated with Ramjas College. Amit is a well-known journalist. He works with the Hindu. He's had stints in Pakistan and Sri Lanka. And Mukul has taught, was one of the most popular, I think, teachers ever in history of Delhi University. Both of them have had a long association with Saleem. So I invite them to make few comments and have a small discussion about Saleem. Yeah, Amit and Mukul.
Now it goes.
Yeah, thank you, Jamal. Thank you for having me here. And I just want to say that it's a real privilege for me to speak here, because Saleem is someone I knew twice, in a sense. Once as a student and later a little bit in Lucknow. And he taught me in 1984 when I joined Ramjas College in 1983. He taught us early medieval India in 84. And then he taught us a paper in later medieval India in 1985. I just want to give you some context about Ramjas College. It was a bit of a battlefield when we went to college. I remember in the first few days, the CRPF was deployed with its submachine guns on the lawn when you entered. And one of the other sights you could see in the college was Saleem, you know, his white starched salwar kurta or kurta pajama, and his carrying his brown bag, and you know, sweating quite a lot in the summer, but very cool. And I remember that you know, in his classes, he was very quiet in the way he spoke, but very deliberate, very forceful. And I think that for me and you know, many of the students who went before and after me, our understanding of medieval India, of Mughal India, was shaped by what Saleem told us. And you know, he was someone who was very approachable. He took a lot of classes for students who spoke or who preferred the Hindi medium. He was always helpful to people. I don't think I submitted a single tutorial to him, but he never seemed to mind. That was the kind of college we were in. It was very different from where he studied. That was at St. Stephen's College. And, you know, above all, I think his approachability, you know, his ability to, you know, develop equations with friends. You know, I was delighted that my daughter Anushka also went to Ramjas, though Saleem had retired, but she did meet him in Lucknow. So, you know, for us, as Mukul, as I open up this discussion to Mukul, you know, for all its problems and issues, for those of us who studied in Ramjas College and those of us who had the privilege of being taught by Saleem, by Mukul, by Dilip and so many others, it was a life-changing experience. And I think the life-changing experience was not due to only what we studied, but the people whom we came into contact with and the interest they took in not just in our academics, but in our lives. And I know that, you know, there is a stellar set of teachers who really made a difference to so many people. So I'm not going to, speak much, but just to tell you that he had a complaint when I moved to Lucknow, when he was in Lucknow, when I met him, is that the Hindus edition never reached him because we were publishing from Allahabad. And then he said, can't you do something about, making sure that the Hindu is published from Lucknow? And not that I had much to do with it, but that did happen. And another thing which, really stuck in my head, when he was speaking to me was that, he said, you should plan your retirement, whenever you retire, you should think about what you're going to do. You shouldn't just one fine day decide that you want to stop doing whatever you're doing. So, I mean, I just want to say that he was just a lovely man, great human being. And I had the privilege of knowing him. And now I'm going to turn to Mukul Manglik, who was his colleague for so many years. Mukul taught me in 1984 as well. And Mukul, I just want to ask you, what are your thoughts on Saleem? 1 year has passed since he's moved on. What are your thoughts about him today?
Yeah, thank you, Amit. I must also say, together with you, that it's a privilege to have been asked to speak about Saleem, and particularly about Saleem during his years at Ramjas College as a teacher and as a colleague. And it's also an honor for me that for having heard all the preceding speakers. So I'm not going to talk about my general thoughts on his death anniversary, his first death anniversary, but I'll stick to the brief given to me, which was actually to talk about and to think about and then talk about what he meant to the college as a teacher of medieval history or a teacher of history, and also as a colleague in multiple ways. So let me just begin by saying that ये औपचारिकता से मैं सिर्फ नहीं कह रहा हूँ, और मैंने बहुत सोचा कि सब लोग इस तरह की बात कर चुके होंगे, लेकिन फिर भी मैं समझता हूँ कि ये जरूरी है मेरे लिए इस तरह की शुरुआत, just to give a sense of the kind of man who became a teacher and colleague at Ramjas College. So Saleem, lover of music, amateur archivist, author and translator, and a critical figure in multiple ways in the LGBTQ movement, was a lovely human soul with a wonderful sense of humor. And as friend and colleague Hari Sen reminded me recently, also with a treasure trove of a richly diverse group of close friends that included writers of prose and poetry, musicians, painters, photographers, architects, puppeteers, academics, lawyers, social activists, fruit sellers, and entrepreneurs. They were cosmopolitan and they celebrated difference. Such was the man, with his enthusiasms for parrots and gardening, to quote Hari once more, his innate humanity, his warm affection, and his generosity of spirit, who became teacher and colleague to many of us at Ramjas College, University of Delhi, where he taught medieval history for 20 years before taking premature retirement in 1993. In fact, अभी दिलीप सिमियन से मेरी बात हो रही थी 4-5 दिन पहले, ऐसे ही याद करते हुए सलीम के सालों को रामजस कॉलेज में, एंड दिलीप सेठ की उसने एक शिकायत दर्ज करी थी इनके साथ, दोनों संग चल रहे थे कॉलेज के प्रांगण में, और सलीम ने कहा था, यार ये क्या तुम टाइम टेबल बनाते वक्त मुझको मिडीवल हिस्ट्री थाम दिया है, और ये वही स्टीरियोटाइप रहता है कि मुसलमान हूँ तो मुझको मुसलमान मिडीवल हिस्ट्री पढ़ाते हैं. I mean, he taught medieval history with a verve and with a scholarship which was rare to find. But I thought ये भी एक दिलीप से बात करते करते मैंने सोचा कि इसका भी जिक्र जरूरी है, because he said कि ये मजाक था, लेकिन at the same time it is something that bothered Saleem कि इस तरह का work allocation हुआ था. But before I carry on from where Amit left off, I'd like to share some images with all of you. These are images which some of us have been, rustling up a lot of papers in the department room from these cupboards. I came across some of these letters of meetings held, department library committee meetings or the student faculty committee meetings 84 onwards, between 84 and 88 or 89. I just want to quickly share those, and then some images of the farewell, a very informal, very lovely farewell that was organized by students in 1993 in a classroom, a very simple affair. So here they are. Just a quick look. I'd ask you to just hold on in your mind's eye to these images, because I'll come back to them, and you better understand why I'm talking about them. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Number 2, can you hear me? Yes. Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So 23/7/84 minutes of the student faculty committee. I'll just talk about that briefly if I can. This was all something that began to come up after the agitation in the early 80s. उसके पहले ये सब नहीं होता था. There were no GVMs of students, there were no student faculty committees, there was no department library, there was no academic standards committee, etc. All of this came out of this agitation, of which Saleem was a very integral part, which took off in Ramjas College and became a university-wide affair in the early 80s. So this is a meeting of one of the first few student faculty committee meetings of the Department of History held in 1984. And I just wanted to look at Amit Barua, in fact, is secretary at that time. And point number 2, where it is saying, where idea of a department library was mooted. उसके पहले department library नहीं होती थी. There was only the central library of Ramjas College. ये पहली मर्तबा 1984 में ये department library का idea आता है. Books and other material is to be collected. Mr. Saleem Kidwai is to supervise the collection and management, etc., etc. And then quickly just go down. 13/8/85 का meeting है. This is the department library committee meeting. Saleem remained central to this as the teacher in charge of the student-run department library. And here, just go down to points number 6 and 7. Teachers will have to pay the membership fee in case they use the library. Teachers who want to Xerox any material must ask Mr. Kidwai before Xeroxing the material. So next year also he remains, and these are the detailed accounts. 30 रुपए दिए जाते थे. Detailed accounts were maintained by students under Saleem's supervision, and every year library fund का जो bill submit होते थे उस पर Saleem का भी signature होता था, together with the 6/6/86 का ये तारीख है. And then of course total expenditure balance इतना Abhijit Barua and received from Abhijit Barua Saleem Kidwai, and all of this was actually, it was not kept with the treasurer of the student faculty committee. This was actually maintained. I mean, there was an account which was maintained for this purpose in the Canara Bank, which had a counter in Ramjas College, and the teacher in charge, or the library ka jo teacher in charge hota tha, in this case it was Saleem and Abhijit Barua, not Amit Barua. उन दोनों के नाम होते थे इस पर, और उसमें पैसा जमा किया जाता था, और बाकायदा हर पाई का एक प्रकार से अकाउंट मेंटेन किया जाता था. And Saleem was very particular about that. This is a public fund and it must be maintained meticulously. Okay, then this is the minutes of a student faculty committee 18/1/88. There are various things discussed, and students were complaining about किताबें नहीं होना, plus classes, एक टीचर छोड़ के चले गए तो वो क्लास नहीं हो रही सोशल फॉर्मेशन की, etc., etc. And point number C, Mr. Saleem Kidwai informed the third year students that for certain topics of social formation paper, that is used to be a third year paper, JMC and IP college lecturers would deliver lectures at Ramjas College. He also reiterated that he would deliver lectures at IP College on certain topics, and the Ramjas third year history students were expected to attend the classes to avoid repetition. I just want to briefly expound on this, because as Sudhanba reminded me, another former student, he said कि हुआ यो था कि IP College के students चाहते थे कि social formation के कुछ topics, particularly rise of Islam पर Saleem के lectures वो attend करें, लेकिन उस जमाने में इसके बावजूद कि रामजस में अर्ली 80s में गुंडा विरोधी आंदोलन हुआ था, जो कि एक यूनिवर्सिटी वाइड आंदोलन बन गया था, फिर भी रामजस का जो रेप्यूटेशन था वो एक उसका गुंडागर्दी के साथ एक इत्तेफाक लोगों के जहन में बैठा हुआ था। इस वजह से उस वक्त ये था, the girls in IP felt that they didn't feel confident enough to come to Ramjas College, and therefore Saleem agreed that as IP College and JMC teachers will come to Ramjas to deliver lectures on certain topics, so he would go to IP College, and students of Ramjas and also from Hindu College would also go to IP College. And Sudanwa said that there were about 120, a class full of 120 students, because they were from third year of these three colleges, जिनको सलीम ने IP college में अनेक he didn't remember the exact number of lectures, but a number of lectures were actually delivered by Saleem, and this must have been the year 1988, if I'm not mistaken. So I think, yeah. So these are just some images of which I wanted to share quickly with you. And then these are the farewell, Mr. Saleem Kidwai, and freshers welcome. So I think, there was a kind of an informality, a kind of a sweetness and intimacy in the classroom space. The classroom space was a space that mattered hugely, not only to Saleem, but to many of us. And I think farewells and freshers welcome were actually held in the classroom space. इसमें कोई पैसा इतना जरूरी नहीं होता था, लेकिन एक मोहब्बत का आलम रहता था. And I think this is what happened here. तो freshers और farewell दोनों को एक प्रकार से मिलजुल कर ये चीज की गई थी 1993 में स्टूडेंट्स के द्वारा, जिसमें हम सब शरीक हुए थे. And here's Saleem. I mean, next to him to the right is actually that's me. But बड़ा मुश्किल है. Yeah, just flowers. And I can't remember what it is that he was gifted. That Sudhakar Singh, Priti Saab, and then there's Saleem. And here that's the final. That's the final image. Okay, I just wanted to quickly share some of these images, and I'll try to come back to some of these. And if you'll permit me, even though Amit has actually talked about Saleem as a teacher, I'd like to flesh that out a little bit by using some bits that some former students who were Amit's contemporaries have actually written and sent me. I've tried to shorten that, compress it, but I think it gives a very kind of a texture and a flavor with some detail about Saleem's manner of teaching, of mode of articulation, and also why he made the kind of impact he did upon students, and the kind of legacy, enduring legacy, as far as teaching, classroom teaching is concerned, that he left behind, which continues in a sense to inspire so many teachers in Ramjas College, not only in the history department, even though they might not have actually encountered him as a teacher, who might have come much later, but the stories continue, and that legacy therefore lives on. So with your permission, here goes. Saleem, whom I would half in jest call Guruji, reminisced a former student, Joseph Mathai, taught with a quiet elegance, drawing from his immense scholarship, his broad perspective, and his deep insights. His gentleness, which of course did not always hide a mischievous sense of humor, never stood in the way of giving to his students all he could of knowledge and wisdom. In a similar vein, another former student, Pankaj Jha, remembers Saleem Kidwai as a teacher unlike any other. Extremely soft-spoken and well-read to a fault, he was both the most sophisticated and the most desi of all teachers. Sophisticated in the careful and gentle choice of his words, and desi in the way he dressed and made the most rustic of students feel at home. He usually came to class a few minutes late and left a few minutes earlier. His classes lacked the catchy political punch of Dilip Simyan or the passionate ruminations of Sudhakar Singh. He did not flex his academic muscles the way Sanjay Nigam could, nor did his demeanor match the strict, no-nonsense discipline of Upreti's scholarship. Saleem's classes took the students into confidence and reassured them that historical narratives did not demand superhuman qualities or unwavering political commitments. His lectures were delivered with care and tenderness. He was in no hurry to establish the formidable character of his academic standing before his students, but almost apologetic about his scholarship. In the process, he gave the students, most of whom came from middle or lower middle classes, that one thing that they lacked the most: confidence. A point that Sudhanva Deshpande, yet another former student, took great pains to emphasize and reiterate during a recent telephonic conversation with me. He gently ushered students into a conversation and into thinking commonsensically about the discipline of history, continued Pankaj. He made history look ordinary. Simple words and short sentences were his preferred mode of articulation. After sharing a particular perspective in very persuasive ways, he would pause and ask, "But do you really think this is how it was?" "Maybe not." And then he would start formulating an alternative perspective equally sympathetically. There couldn't have been a more effective lesson in the possibility and desirability of multiple histories. According to Sudhanva, the equally remarkable thing was that he did all this without ever making eye contact with students in the class. This came to me as a complete surprise. He did all this without making eye contact with students in the class. He would pace up and down, looking down at his feet all the time, as if completely immersed in lives and times past, and could in the process mesmerize students into looking at him, even though he never looked at them, and vividly imagining the words that he spoke of as if he had been witness to happenings in times gone by. This he did while lecturing at Ramjas or at IP College, for that matter, in the example that I've already talked about. He always had a respectful ear for any student who chose to speak, share an opinion, or ask a question, reminisced Pankaj. He would tilt his head and listen carefully. Even when he disagreed, he would show utmost regard to the expressed idea and deal with it as if it was an opinion expressed by another professional historian. Joseph Pathaya adds, while classroom teaching was mostly in English, students, as Amit also said, students were not comfortable in English, would connect with him for help in the subject in Hindi, and Saleem was always there to do the needful. In fact, whether in English or in Hindi, small group discussions are remembered as having been Saleem's forte, even by students from colleges other than Ramjas, who sent in their assignments to be corrected and commented upon and discussed with him. If there is one thing, however, says Pankaj Jha, that probably all his students would remember about him, it was the easy charm he exuded. He shared his ideas and his cigarettes with equal ease in the classroom. When Satanic Verses was banned, several students of my class wanted to put him to the litmus test of secularism. One student in a tutorial class asked him what he thought about the ban. His response was classic: "No book should be banned, but that really does not take us very far, since that should be obvious. We should all read the book ourselves," he said. "But the book is not available," we said. He returned the next day with a photocopy of the book and asked us to circulate it amongst all those who might wish to read it. A banned book, after all, was better than not reading the book at all. This was quintessential Saleem. And this brings me back very, very briefly to some of the images I talked about. For Saleem, it was not just the lecturing was very important, communicating with students, but equally important was that to encourage students to read and to discuss. But how do you read and how do you discuss it? Books are simply not available, and that is why the department library became so critical to him as a teacher. These were not two separate things. I think they were completely intertwined as far as he was concerned. To be able to lecture effectively in class, to be able to communicate ideas, there had to be a discussion, and for there to be a discussion, there had to be books, and those books had to be made available. This is pre-internet. Photocopies were not easy to find. Books were not easy to find. Photocopying was also it wasn't a very certain and predictable chakkar. It was difficult. Saleem would make sure that he sent the students. He would make students who were class reps in the library do the work, but he would guide them. He would guide them in and help them to create a space, a department library space that could be regulated and run by them, putting systems in place, which systems continue to exist even to this day. More than 3 decades have passed, but those systems are still in place. And year in and year out, new batches come in and they're trained into those systems. There's been a bit of a break because of COVID, etc. But the point I'm making is the department library was absolutely central to Saleem's lives. He was also an institution builder, which is why, for example, equally important was the whole question of putting into place, working concretely upon both the central timetable for the university, for the college, and the department timetable for the department. And Hari Sen, for example, has these wonderful images and descriptions about how they would together go to his sister's place, and there would be the dining table, and on the dining table would be chart papers and different colored pens and foot ruler and eraser, and they would spend the entire day gossiping, talking about all kinds of things, with chai coming in and kebabs coming in, and from 11 o'clock to 6 o'clock they would take, and the timetable would be done. So there was a fun in doing it. And Vinita Chandra, another colleague who had joined she learned the skill of making the central timetable from Saleem Kidwai, but not on a table on the floor of the staff room, where they would sit together over reams of paper with foot ruler, eraser, different colored pens, etc., and make a different kind of a central timetable. And so the point I'm making is that for Saleem as a teacher, it was not just the classroom. The classroom was critical. But to make the classroom a meaningful space, all of this was equally important. It was not seen as, "Arey yaar, ye bhi karna hai." It has to be done, but it is something that he could see that this is all connected and interconnected, which is why he also gave so much importance to what is called the ECAC, that is the Extracurricular Activities Committee. Because
Mukul, sorry.
Okay.
Time की वजह से.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so,
हाँ.
No. I know this is. Okay, so I'll just wind up simply by saying that, of course, it's when I'm thinking about Saleem as a teacher at Ramdas College, I am thinking of him in the classroom. I'm thinking of him in the department library. I'm thinking of him as the maker of timetables. I'm thinking of him as convener of the ECAC, and I'm thinking of him on various staff council committees, all of which contribute to making the college and of course in the movement in the 1980s, all of which together contributed towards making the college a meaningful academic space to be in, which he created, but also a space that allowed him to become the kind of teacher and leave the kind of legacy that Saleem has left for all of us at Ramdas College. Thank you, and I'm sorry for taking up so much time.
No. Thank you so much, Mukul. This was Amit and Mukul. This was an aspect of Saleem which we all who have been in Delhi University remember. And I'm so glad that
if I may, Jamal, I just like to thank
yes.
Mukul for what he said. And it was nice to see the records of our History Society. I know it was a great struggle when it happened because there were no course materials available, and the college library was a big disaster, which is why this effort was made. And many of my other friends like Joseph and Rahul Roy and Amar Kanwar, their names figure in that historical document that Mukul shared with us. I just like to say that Ramdas College was a democratic space, or a space which we aspired to be democratic because of the great teachers that we all had. And I think that it was a space which was very different from many of the other colleges in Delhi University, principally because of all the sharing that went on and the easy, friendly relations that students and teachers had. So I'd really like to thank Mukul and you, Jamal and Madhvi, for letting me say my 2 bits today.
Thanks a lot to both of you, and I think Rahul is here and Joseph also. Rahul Roy and Joseph Mathai, and yeah, I mean it's very moving. I mean I'm at a loss of words. Thanks Mukul and Amit. Thank you so much. नाउ अब हम फातिमा रिजवी और सूफिया किदवाई को फिर से इनवाइट करते हैं, छोटी खाला को, कि सलीम के ट्रांसलेशंस के बारे में थोड़ी बात करें। आप दोनों बहुत क्लोजली उससे इन्वॉल्व थी। एक चीज़ की माफ़ी चाहते हैं फातिमा जी और छोटी खाला की, ये वक्त की थोड़ा ध्यान रखिएगा, तो अगर आप लोग 7-8 मिनट में कर लें, क्योंकि अभी 2 अच्छे बड़े सेशंस बाकी हैं। जी, ओवर टू यू फातिमा।
Thank you, Jamal. Good evening, everyone. It's really a pleasure and a very emotional moment to be on this session. Saleem Saab हमारे मामू थे, my dearest मामू, my mother's youngest cousin, and very, very dear to all of us. When we were young, when we were little girls, because I don't have brothers, we did not really meet him because he was already in Delhi. And thereafter, he was in Canada. But we received letters from him. And I remember those letters were always a pleasure to read, particularly when they came from Canada, you know, the airmail envelopes. And a couple of times he would send photographs to my mother. And it was a pleasure to watch them, to see them, and to know how he was doing in Canada. Thereafter, he was in Delhi and we were growing up. I remember as young girls, he told my mother that you should send the girls to study in Delhi. And of course, my mother wasn't going to do it because Bombay was good enough. And he would always argue, no, Delhi is better. You can't do that. But it never happened, really. Thereafter, when he came to Lucknow, we began to meet more closely and meet up more often. And I think my Choti Khala here, my aunt, would like to say something over here. So I'll give it over to her and then I'll take up again.
We're going to talk about his translation, which he, before Fatima came to Lucknow, he had already translated the novel Shama, written by A.R. Khatun. And this was because he had heard my mother read it out to him so often. He not only loved reading, but my mother would read, when she was reading something, she would start reading loudly and he would sit and listen. So he translated that book, which hasn't been printed so far. It has not come out in print. Then he went to Lahore, where he got this Malka Pukhraj's memoirs, and he translated those. Then Fatima came to Lucknow and she started her stint in Lucknow University. And then a lot of discussions used to take place about translation because Fatima was doing some herself. I would be sitting there with him in his room, and he would normally ask me to look up the dictionary for certain things that he wanted. And I would, sometimes he would, when he had a doubt, and he would be thinking of which phrase or which sentence to use or what word to use. Sometimes reluctantly, fearing that I would be snubbed if I interfered in his work, I did it. So he would sometimes accept my suggestions, and so I would be helping him. Then there was Fatima, who was also discussing her work with him, and he was giving his bit of advice or whatever suggestions he had to give. So this translation thing became quite a regular thing with Saleem, Fatima, and me, of course, just butting in now and then. And he encouraged me to also do one, which I did. And then we were doing one together, which he said he would do the difficult chapters and I would do the easy ones. But that didn't see. I don't know whether he began it or not. I did a couple of chapters. I hope I will be able to proceed.
Definitely, it will see the light of day. Most certainly it will. जी, तो मैं ये कह रही थी कि हमारे मामू जब आए लखनऊ तो अच्छा तो बहुत लगा, हम लोग सब बहुत खुश हुए कि ये आ गए हैं, और मामू से दोस्त वो कब बन गए मुझे नहीं मालूम. That is a transition that obviously happened over time, but I don't know exactly. I can never put my finger on it and say कि अच्छा ये जमाना था जब हमारी दोस्ती रिश्तेदारी दोस्ती में तब्दील हो गई. Perhaps because we were in the same profession, perhaps because we had some similar interests, perhaps because we were both working on Qurratullah and Haider, who was from Lucknow. He was translating her and I was studying her. So perhaps this was one of the reasons or one of the things that brought us closer. But I do remember at times, you know, with a big bit of wickedness, how the jokes that we cracked, the things that we shared, some of the things that, you know, जो मामू और भांजी के बीच में नहीं शेयर होती हैं, लेकिन फिर भी हम लोग शेयर करते थे क्योंकि हमारी दोस्ती थी. And it was so well accepted. Often it had to do with translations, often it had to do with professional life, often it had to do with personal things and so on. And he was a confidant also. जहाँ तक तर्जुमे का सवाल है, मुझे याद है एक छोटा सा किस्सा मैं सुनाऊं आप लोगों को. जिस जमाने में वो सफीना गमे दिल का तर्जुमा कर रहे थे, तो एक दिन घर आए हमारे और थोड़े से परेशान थे. तो कहने लगे कि भाई I don't know, she's referring to some Cordwell, I don't know what it is, whether to look for this. You know, he took 2 or 3 names and I said, no, MJ, this would be Christopher Cordwell. This is only because I knew that Qurratullah and Haider at that time, when she wrote Safina, was dabbling, more than dabbling, in fact, in modernist literature, and Christopher Cordwell was a perfect icon. So he said, Acha. Then he came home and he checked it out, and, you know, it fitted the context of the text. And thereafter, you know, he began regularly writing emails. And I remember the subject of the email was always help. So I knew it had something to do either with modernist literature or with something that needed to be, you know, understood about her, because Safina is also in many ways a semi-autobiographical text. So very often we shared notes on this, and there were times when he would connect with me at 11 o'clock in the night. Sometimes he would send a WhatsApp message and I would have gone off to bed because I was an early sleeper. And I would see it early in the morning and I would respond to him. And obviously he was not a very early riser. So, you know, we wouldn't connect until later in the following day. But it was a lovely time while he was translating this. And when he first shared his earliest manuscript, you know, of the earliest translation of Safina with me, I went through it and I said, but MJ, don't you think this is very fast-paced? Is she actually writing that fast? Or is her pace actually that fast? And he said, no, but you see, the editor understands better. So I had to respect that, obviously, because the editor understands the pulse of the reader. And this went on for a long time. And then Safina was ready for publication, etc. And I think for all of us viewers over here, my Choti Khala and I decided that we would read a passage in Urdu. She would read the passage in Urdu and I would read it in English. I think this is the best way we can give the flavor of the translation. He was a very meticulous translator. Before I do that, I must say this. He was a very meticulous translator, researching each and every aspect about her, because Qurratullah and Haider is a very, very, she's an academic's delight, literally. She's a very literary minded writer. And so one had to get to the bottom of what she was saying. So I remember the long discussions that we had about several things also. But yeah, you know, rather than stand between you and the translation, I think because we are also short on time, I'll ask Choti Khala to read her Urdu essay, the Urdu passage, and then I'll read mine.
कला की नीलगों वसत में अजीब अजीब शक्लों के जानवर फिर रहे थे और अनोखे दरख्त और बेलें हवा में लटक रही थी। फिजा में नमी और खुनकी थी और मिस कैथलीन च्यू मुसिर थी कि मैं 2 चमचे ऑस्टोमाल्ट दूध में मिलाकर पीऊं ताकि सुबह के वक्त की दरिया के ठंडी हवा के असर से मुझे जुकाम न हो जाए। मिस च्यू हस्ब मामूर अपना सुर्ख कोट पहने थी। स्टीमर के कैबिन में खिड़की के पास लेटे लेटे मैंने कुछ सोते और कुछ जागते में ये सब कुछ देखा। बाहर सुबह की नीलगों सफेदी फैलती जा रही थी और नखरेई पानी में किनारों के साए डोलते थे। हवा सुबह की धुंधली चांदनी में चांदी की ठंडी लौ की तरह दहक रही। शुद्ध सनातन धर्म हिंदुओं के बाजार, मुसलमान जुलाहों के महल्ले, अंग्रेज हकाम की कोठियां, दरिया के परे, इन सब पर सुबह की कासनी धुंध छाई हुई थी। यूनिवर्सिटी की तवील इमारत, सारनाथ का अबदी सुकूत, जौनपुर और कन्नौज के तेज सुर्ख गुलाबों के तख्ते, आम के बागात। इस हुस्न का ज़हनी तज्जिया नामुमकिन है। ये मंजर अबदी है और लाजवाल। अब्बाजान ने स्टीमर के अरशे पर आकर अपने आप से कहा, कोई हमसे ये सुबह, ये मौसम, ये खनखाते हुए ब्राह्मण, ये बिछुए बजाती लड़कियां, ये रवाही सुकून के साथ टहलती हुई गायें, ये मनाजर छीन सकता है? नहीं। अब्बाजान ने तय किया, बनारस की सुबह, बनारस की सुबह हमारी जिंदगी की कैफियत का एक जुज है। ये हम से कभी न छिनेगा। स्टीमर किनारे पे आने लगा।
थैंक यू। सो अब मैं अंग्रेजी का पढ़ूंगी तो आप जाहिर है तर्ज में और जबान में और कल्चरल जो डिफरेंसेस हैं वो तो आप लोग समझ ही लेंगे। एब्सोल्युटली यू नो poles apart they are. So this is chapter 4. A word before I read the English translation. This is a passage that is actually about the Haidars and the Balwans coming from Port Blair to Ghazipur, and the ship they are on is sailing down the Ganga. They are both going to go to Ghazipur. This is an autobiographical section which he has reimagined and written about in the text. So it goes like this in English. In the vast azure vacuums, strange animals roamed around, and unusual trees and creepers swayed in the wind. The air was crisp and moist, and Miss Kathleen Shue insisted that I drink 2 tablespoons of Oster malt dissolved in milk so that I wouldn't catch a cold from the cool river air of the morning. Miss Shue, as usual, was wearing her red coat. I noticed all this lying next to the window in the cabin of the steamer, half asleep. Outside, the azure light of the morning was beginning to spread, and the shadow of the banks was swaying on the silver water. The breeze in the faint moonlight of the early morning was blowing like a brisk flame. Lilac sunlight lit the clean markets of the Sanatan Dharm Hindus, the quarters of Muslim weavers, the bungalows of the British rulers along the river. It also fell on the long buildings of the university, the eternal peace of Sarnath, the fields of dark red roses in Jaunpur and Kannauj, and on the mango orchards. It is impossible to analyze this beauty intellectually. This vision is eternal and indestructible. Abbajan came onto the deck of the steamer and asked himself, can anyone take away this morning, this season, these Brahmins clearing their throats, these girls making music with their anklets, these cows grazing with divine calmness from me? No, never. This Banaras morning can only be a Banaras morning. It is a part of my being. It will never be taken away from me. The steamer docked on the riverbank.
I must just end this by saying that one day Fatma's mother phoned and then she asked me, how is Sallu? So I said, oh, that औरत उनको बहुत परेशान की. She was startled and suddenly she said, who's this औरत? So I said, Quratul and Heather. Because sometimes, you know, he would get very worked up when he couldn't read the French and the German written in Urdu script. That used to amuse me immensely.
Yeah, in fact, the script was always a bother. The Urdu script was always a bother because, sometimes the print was not good. Sometimes the scribes, particularly with the English words, because all English words are written in the Urdu script, in the Nastali script. So sometimes the scribe was probably experimenting with different kinds of pronunciations or what. And it was always, a huge, like a puzzle. What is she writing about? Who is she? Sometimes one wondered, am I reading right? And those were questions that, dogged all of us. In fact, I also remember when he was doing Rafiq Hussain, the Mirror of Wonders, he was very upset one day and he said it was so difficult to translate the sounds of the animals. And that was quite a thing to surmount. All these little things that arose in the process of translation, because obviously English is a language that is far more casual, I would say, than Urdu, which is a very nuanced language and a very culturally, I would say, far richer language. But and he was always negotiating, and he was negotiating with a great deal of enthusiasm. I'd like to end our session here. Thank you very much, Sanat Kada, for giving us this opportunity to talk about him.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamal.
Thank you. Thank you, Fatma and Sufi. This was very, I mean, I think what Fatma just said, he was always negotiating, and I think he was, that was one of his, throughout his life, पूरी जिंदगी में उन्होंने बहुत negotiations किए और बड़ी successfully किए और उससे बहुत वो जूझते रहते थे. काली, अगला सेशन काली और कालीदास स्वामीनाथन सहाफ़ी रहे हैं, जर्नलिस्ट रहे हैं, सलीम के बहुत ख़ास दोस्तों में से हैं. हम लोगों के, हम भी ने भी बहुत सीखा है. और सलीम हाय अख्तरी, इन्होंने बेगम अख्तर की मेरे ख्याल से सर पहली फिल्म थी बेगम अख्तर पे, जो काली की बड़ी फैबुलस और बड़ी बात ब्रेकिंग फिल्म है. सलीम के बहुत अजीज दोस्त थे वो, मैं और कुछ नहीं कहूँगा. सबा दीवान भी सलीम की दोस्त हैं, स्टूडेंट हैं, खुद बहुत फिल्म मेकर हैं. और उनकी जो तवाइफनामा शायद आपकी किताब है, मैं पढ़ रहा था और उस पे, इट्स अ पाथ ब्रेकिंग बुक. आई थिंक इट्स one of the first chronicles or whatever you call it of a family of a Tawaif. So I don't want to say anything more. Sabah se I remember meeting both Kali and Sabah, thanks to Saleem. I met them 3 decades ago, and in Lucknow and in Delhi. So yeah, Sabah and Kali, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jamal, and thank you, Sanat Kada, for giving me this opportunity. It's a real privilege to speak about Saleem, especially, in the context of Begum Akhtar, because, well, I was his student, then I kind of graduated and became his friend, but he remained my mentor in so many ways. And my work, my film work on, especially on Tawaifs, the other song, and the book then eventually that came out of it, Tawaifnama. The research for both owes a lot to my conversations with Saleem. And I remember this wonderful stay I had in Lucknow. I was supposed to be researching, but it was one of the most joyful experiences, and being with him. And his was the first library, actually. Which was जब आनंद लोग में सलीम रहते थे, तो उनकी जो लाइब्रेरी थी, उनकी जो उसमें जो the first lot of books around courtesan cultures, music, was from his bookshelf, and he was very generous in sharing that. So as far as coming to Begum Akhtar is concerned, we talked a lot about Begum Akhtar. I mean, he often referred to her in our conversations about Tawaifs. And it always surprised me that although his family, he was from Lucknow, Begum Akhtar was from Lucknow, and the families knew each other, it seemed. And his family knew Ishtiaq Ahmed Abbasi, that is Begum Akhtar's husband, and his family very well, or Ana Jana bhi tha shayad. Lekin she hadn't registered on his mental landscape. She did actually only when he shifted to Delhi as a student, and he attended a concert of hers in Sapru House. So I think I would like to share in his own words. Just there's an interview of his by Aditya Vikram in this Agents of Ishq about his relationship with Begum Akhtar, and I thought I would just read out the way he described that experience of actually first becoming aware of Begum Akhtar. In 1967, I moved to Delhi to study. Someone said that she was performing at the Sapru House and insisted that I should come along. There, I first heard her sing live, and what an experience that was. Seeing her on stage and hearing that voice was transformative. She exuded this charm and this magnetism from the stage that even as a 17-year-old, I was struck by it. This image of her sitting on the stage in the spotlight with the harmonium and smiling naturally, her diamond nose stud flashing as she moved her head. Over then subsequent meetings, then he got introduced formally to her, by his father, and then subsequent concerts. Saleem became, along with, a close friend of his close friend, the poet Aga Shahid Ali, became part of Begum Akhtar's inner circle. And we were, privy to a lot of conversations, confidences, and till, her death and her untimely death in 1974. So I would like to ask you, Kali, as one of his oldest friends, how would you describe Saleem's relationship with Begum Akhtar? And also, related to that, is what factors do you think were at play? Of course, the families knew each other, they were from Lucknow, that of course. But what other factors do you think would have been at play in forging that friendship? Although he called it fanship, but it was obviously a friendship over the years.
It was a fanship. He was fida. He just, she obsessed him all his life. It was.
He said she was the only woman he was in love with. So I guess.
And forever. And Amit Barua mentioned him as an amateur archivist, or was it Mukul? But his archive of Begum Akhtar memorabilia, and clippings is exhaustive. It should be put together, and having interacted and become in an inner circle, having penetrated the inner circle of Begum Akhtar in those formative years. Remember, he was 17 when he, sort of was exposed to her. And then both Saleem and I have also mentioned this, but we didn't quite analyze it in this manner, perhaps. But there is something that needs to be delved into. It is this attraction of young gay men to Tawais, or to the institution of Tawaif. It could be very abstract, but I don't know whether, and I think that's what drew Saleem and me closer in a way, amongst many other things, of course. But because I had a very similar relationship with Siddheshwari Devi when I was also the same age. And she too patronized me. And I use the word patronize with all its connotations. In fact, there used to be a distant relative or Mama or somebody in Siddheshwari's house, who referred to me as Sharifon ke bacche. And his remark was कि आजकल शरीफों के बच्चे देखो कितना गाना बजाने में शौक रखते हैं. And so it was also a generation which had come to somewhat grudgingly perhaps, but or even out of fascination, trying to penetrate the world of the Tawaif in its last gasp.
Yeah.
Because that was the last gasp, Begum Akhtar and Siddheshwari, because by the time we come to the next generation, they have been replaced by middle class, mostly Brahmin, upper caste women. So coming to know the singers or the musicians from the other side of the social demarcation was an experience, and it was fascinating, and we both went through it around the same time. I was also 16, 17. He was 5 years older to me, so he experienced it 5 years before I did, and that's how we connected, and we would discuss. And by the time I grew up, the world of the wife was over, and 20, 30 years after that, today, of course, it's becoming more acceptable, even fashionable in a way, to discuss the trope of the Tawaif.
Yes.
Yes, you see, but for us, it was not a trope at that time. It was experience, and we were experiencing a world which was, and perhaps there is a fascination that gay men had towards the wives. It's Saleem would put it down to the eternal sense of longing, for example. Bala Saraswati once remarked that how can middle class, upper caste housewives ever do bhava, ever do bhav, abhinaya with conviction? It is we, the dasis, who had to take on a lover every evening and then forget him the next morning.
Yes, in fact, Saleem.
So that was there was a huge connection, which really sort of, we kept discussing this all through our our friendship, about what it was that attracted, and this was not only in our case. I suspect Umrao Jahan Ada was a similar case, and so there was something about these Tawaifs that attracted young middle class
gay men
to them, and they patronized us.
Saleem writes in the same interview, he says, every gay man I knew then was in love with her music, that is Begum Akhtar's music. I mean, for gay men, her lyrics, which were mostly about heartbreak and longing, made a lot of sense. I don't know how it happens with this generation, but in our generation, this was there. You fell in love with someone, and it might be a straight man who is not recognizing it or reciprocating it. Gay men knew all about the agony of being in love. So I think that is one part of it in terms of, the poetry and the repertoire, or what the Tawaif was singing. I guess, in terms of also, because my conversations with Saleem, for instance, I sensed a lot of sensitivity and empathy, also coming from the fact of a certain shared sense of, being stigmatized in terms of sexuality. So would you be,
No, that of course.
and that is
of
perhaps
course.
also why tawaifs, as you were telling me, that tawaifs also in turn were attracted to gay men. And I think maybe
Yes.
because they felt more comfortable with gay men. I mean, even if it might not have been stated openly, or
At least I felt that it was, they sussed us out very fast, even before we did ourselves, And in fact, Saleem told me that Begum Akhtar used to joke about his relationship with Aga Shahid Ali. And she said, "Ab tum shaadi kar lo bas." Tum shaadi kyun nahi kar lete? Acha. And so that was, of course, there. But apart from that, one thing I would say that also Saleem interacted with two of the biggest names of the last generation of Tawaifs who survived. And how? I mean, they survived because of their defiance, not because of accommodation of the society in general. And they did it on their own terms. Begum Akhtar was not very aggressive or vocal about it. But Malka, like Bala Saraswati, was very assertive about that identity.
very
and
unapologetic.
upfront. Very unapologetic, absolutely. Begum Akhtar was more subtle. She was
Also indulged, as Saleem said, she lived her life through myths of her own making.
Yes, but she was coquettish and she was seductive and she was, sort of charming. Whereas Malka and a couple of other Tawaifs I knew, like Gangubai, absolutely no nonsense. And
that about Malka also comes out in her memoirs, which
Yes.
Saleem translated
Yes.
so well
Yes.
from Urdu
Yes.
into
And
English.
in fact, I would say that perhaps it is after the 18th century text in Telugu by Muddupallani, who was a very remarkable Devadasi in the Tanjore court, who has left behind a text about her own ancestry and her own life and what it means to be a Dasi. The first text we encounter in first person voice from a Devadasi or a Tawaif is Malka Pukhraj's account. And in fact, I knew him very closely at that period because the common friend through which this manuscript came to him was also a kind of a mentor to me and almost a father figure. In fact, I've stayed in his house in Lahore umpteen times, 5 or 6 times over the last 3 decades. And Raza Kazim, who we must remember in this context. And he sussed out and he decided that it should be Saleem, perhaps, and he suggested it to Malka Pukhraj. And then Saleem went to Lahore and they met and then he worked on the translation. And in fact, Malka was very clear that it should come out in India and perhaps it should come out in translation and in Urdu. The Urdu text has just come out in Pakistan this year.
Now.
Yes. And so I am keenly awaiting a copy of that because so far only in translation book absolutely is not only first rate, but it opens many worlds, into the life of a very remarkable woman and how she negotiated through the 40s.
And then I think it was his experience of the interaction with the Begum
from feudal patronage to proscenium. Yeah, I mean, she epitomized whole change in the set. So it's a very important text.
Absolutely. And that leads us to his,
I think
big essay.
Sabha's camera is freezing, huh?
Yours was also earlier. So I was getting confused. I think, yeah, now it is perhaps mine. I don't know. Yeah, that leads us to his essay, the big essay he did for seminar. Song Sung True. The memoirs came out in 2003. And his essay, The Singing Ladies Must Find a Voice, came out in 2004. And in just so many respects, it remains such a very path-breaking essay. In terms of, moving away from the kind of, if writing on Tawaifs a lot of times indulges in hagiography or indulges in myth-making and romanticization. But here he brought his historian sensibility, which, and so that the essay in so many ways gives an account of the times and the lives of the women without this rosy tinted glasses. I think that is really important, and that I always felt about Saleem, that although he said that he hero worshipped Begum Akhtar, his was perhaps always, when he spoke about her and the little that he's written about her, he hasn't written as much as he ought to have. I wish he had written more, because he would have done a remarkable job of it. But whenever he did and when he spoke, I think he was one person who actually spoke about her with insight and very perceptively, and without that kind of sidestepping the mythologies, the multiple mythologies that surround her, and which have further been peddled by so many others. And that's quite remarkable, about.
Absolutely. In
Kali,
fact,
Kali and Sabha, sorry, I'm.
you're running out of time.
Sorry.
Yes. Well, thank you, Kali. Thank you so much. This.
I didn't want to end it so abruptly. No.
Not at all. Sorry. No, we. And thank you so much, Jamal. Thank you, Samit Kada, for giving us this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Jamal and Madhvi.
Thank you. So sorry, I had to abruptly.
Not at all.
No. Thanks, Kali and Sabha. And Kali, thank you so much for coming. I mean, everyone thought that Pata nahi tum aao, to get you to talk is a very big, difficult task. So thanks for coming. Tumhari mohabbat Saleem ke liye. Okay, now we move on, and I would like to invite Ritvik to talk about. In fact, it sort of flows in from this session about Saleem's contribution or Saleem's activism or Saleem's support to the queer movement and in Lucknow and elsewhere. Yeah, Ritvik, keep tap on time. Thanks.
So, talking about Saleem, the first image which appears in my mind is that we used to walk in the Pride March and Pride Parade, and at the end of the Pride, the destination where it was planned to end, and at that place Saleem used to stand, and we used to see that he's standing over there. So I have that image, that concept, that Salim is not just the beginning of the queer movement in Lucknow, but also he is the destination, because his views, his idea of being a queer is always a revolutionary idea which every queer person needs to achieve. Because knowingly, unknowingly, we all enshrine the very heteronormative ideas, and even want to achieve that very heteronormative lifestyles. Else even gays are thinking about having a partner, going into monogamous relationships. So Salim clicked all these ideas and poked us to, oh, सोचो इस पर, is this only the way? Can't we think beyond it? So challenging those heteronormative ideas and thinking beyond that, thinking institutions like family apart from the very heteronormative की partner है, बच्चा है, उसके अलावा आपकी एक दुनिया हो सकती है, आपका अपना डिजाइन किया हुआ एक फैमिली हो सकता है जिसमें आपके लोग होंगे, आपके प्रेमी जन होंगे, जिनका शायद रिश्ता कई बार नाम ना हो उन रिश्तों का, या कई बार खाली बहुत अच्छे दोस्त हों, तो उसमें आपका रिलेशनशिप. सेकेंड, हिज इनकरेजमेंट, like all when I used to talk to Saleem, and with every word he has some books to refer, you know, ये ऐसा होगा तो एक किताब है वो पढ़ लेना, वो you can read that book. So he's continuously encouraging to read, to develop, to grow. So that person doesn't wants to limit someone and wants everyone to grow. So that was the best thing, and he himself gave us that opportunity. Means the Lucknowites have this opportunity to grow with the name of Saleem. I went to an event, I remember, in it's on my side. I maybe because I'm traveling actually. So basically,
Okay, so we will get
when
yeah,
we talk about
let us bring in the next session, and then you try and log in and log out, and log in. Will that be better?
yeah, sure.
Okay, so ठीक है Ritvik, sorry, if you're traveling, there may be a problem there. Madhvi and Nasreen, are you there? हम लोग शुरू करें माधवी और नसरीन दोनों जो हैं. So I am inviting Madhvi and Nasreen now. Yeah, hi Madhvi. So lovely to see you again. और नसरीन कहाँ है? उनकी भी शक्ल दिखा दो. Yeah. So Madhvi and Nasreen have had. It's difficult to describe their relationship with Saleem because it's a very old relationship. It's a very, very intimate relationship with Sanat Kada, Madhvi, and the entire team. Lucknow, जब सलीम गए थे, तो in a way, Sanat Kada became a kind of Sanat Kada kind of, I would say, I mean, it's my personal thing, but anchored Saleem's and really gave a sort of direction and purpose to Saleem's life and idea, and they have been very intrinsic to Saleem's right from last 20 years, right till the end. So I won't say anything more. Madhvi and Nasreen, अब आप लोग I'm handing it over to you.
Nasreen,
yeah.
Nasreen, आप शुरू कीजिए.
नसरीन अनम्यूट कर लें आप अपने आप को.
जी. मुझे कोई दिख नहीं रहा है. सभी को आदाब. मैं नसरीन फ्रॉम सनत. सलीम भाई से.
नसरीन, तुम्हारी वॉइस बहुत मडल्ड है. तुम लोग क्या एक ही आसपास हो? आप लोग साथ बैठ के बात करें तो ज्यादा बेहतर है. हाँ नसरीन.
आदाब सभी को. सलीम भाई का जो हमारे साथ रिश्ता रहा है सनत कदा के थ्रू, एज अ भाई हम बोलते थे उनको, काफी अच्छा और काफी खूबसूरत रिश्ता हमारा रहा. और उनको काम के जरिए ऐसे इंसान को हम जान पाए हैं कितने अच्छे और किस तरह के वो मेंटर थे हम लोगों के बीच. कुछ भी काम करना होता था सनत कदा में, फिल्मिस्तान उनके थ्रू शुरू किया। कैसे फिल्मिस्तान शुरू किया जाता है, उसका पूरी महीने की फिल्म बताना, उसके सिनॉप्सिस निकालना, उनके घर जाना, मतलब एक पर्सनल कंप्यूटर अपना देना, काम करना, उनकी पर्सनल चीजों को छूने का इजाजत देना, उनके घर जाना, इस तरह की काफी यादें हैं। और प्लस जो है, जब थीम हम लोग रिसर्च करते थे, रची बसी तहजीब, हमें याद है, वो काफी इन्वॉल्व थे हमारे और निम्रा के साथ। जब उनसे कुछ हम लोगों को एडिट कराना था, कुछ पूछना होता था, तो उनका आने का दिल नहीं होता था, तो हम लोग को बुला लेते थे। निम्रा कहती थी चलो मामू जनिया ने बुलाया, का वहां जाते थे हम लोग। तो काफी अच्छा उनके साथ वक्त बिताया है, खाना पीना और एडिटिंग करना, और काफी आइडियाज देना कैसे काम, मतलब माधवी दी नहीं होती थी तो लगता नहीं था कि कोई है, माधवी दी नहीं है तो कैसे काम होगा, क्योंकि वो एक मेंटर के तौर पे थी। फिल्मिस्तान शुरू करना, सिनॉप्सिस करना, बेगम अख्तर का इवेंट प्लान करना, जो भी करना वो बहुत अच्छे से सपोर्ट करते थे, बहुत प्यार से बताते थे उनको। और जब उनको यहाँ आना होता था, हम लोग कहते सलीम भाई आ जाइए, यहाँ काफी लोग हैं, तो कहते थे मैं नहीं आऊंगा, लेकिन फिर भी हम लोग कहते आइए, तो कहते थे अच्छा एक शर्त पे आऊंगा। उनका शौक मूंगफली का बहुत खाने का शौक था, स्पेशली उनके लिए मूंगफली मंगा के हम लोग रखते थे। और फिर कहते थे अच्छा पूरी सब्जी खाएंगे, ममता आ रही है तो बोलो मेरे लिए समोसे ले आए चौक से। और खुद भी वो अपने हाथ के बेक किए हुए केक लाते थे, हम सबको टेस्ट कराते थे। तो ये सब बहुत अच्छी अच्छी यादें हैं। शॉप में भी काफी वो क्रिसमस का केक उनके लिए स्पेशली ऑर्डर होता था। और कुछ भी वो अगर वो शॉप में नहीं आते थे, फोन पे आता था कि मेरे लिए सॉक्स मंगा देना, मेरे लिए बुक मार्क्स मंगा देना, मतलब वो एक अपनापन के तरीके से कस्टमर कभी बने ही नहीं। मतलब यहाँ आके लगा कि बहुत अच्छे इंसान से मुलाकात हुई थी हमारी। और आखिरी मोमेंट ऐसा था कि हम मुलाकात नहीं कर पाए, जो 3 साल से, क्योंकि वो भी हॉस्पिटल में, हम भी हॉस्पिटल में, बस यही थी कि कहीं खुशी थी कहीं गम था। और आज के दिन मेरी बेटी पैदा हुई, जिस दिन सलीम भाई को हम लोग ने खो दिया। थैंक यू सब एवरीवन।
आदाब। आई नो कि बहुत बहुत कुछ हो चुका है उनके बारे में, बट आई थिंक कि इट्स इंटरेस्टिंग कि जब मुकुल बात कर रहे थे और सब लोग, तो एक आई मीन ऑफ कोर्स बहुत सिखाने की बात थी उनके अंदर, and he was a teacher and a mentor for Sanat Kada. But I just also want to add that he was also a very strict teacher and mentor. And if there was someone Sanat Kada was scared of and kept Sanat Kada on track, it was Saleem. So, I mean, I think as everyone spoke about his different aspects, this was something that I wanted to say. And maybe that's the way to be. मतलब कोई टीचर और प्रोफेसर हो और मेंटर हो तो उनको स्ट्रिक्ट होना बहुत बहुत जरूरी है, और हम शायद इस चीज को बहुत ज्यादा मिस करते हैं और लगता है कि शायद हम गलत ट्रैक में ना चले जाएं। आई थिंक सनत कदा और बेगम वो रामडवानी बुक स्टोर वर 2 स्पेसेस जिसको सलीम के लिए एक लखनऊ की चीज हो गई, एंड अ स्पेस जहां वो आ सके। A space, मतलब he didn't have his university, he didn't have the Delhi ka friends and those kinds of spaces in Lucknow. वो उन्होंने he chose to come back to this city, he loved this city, but वो खोजते थे, he would look for these spaces, and I think that both Ramadwani bookstore and Sanat Kada became those spaces, and I think that he helped us make it like that space, that little I mean, that personalized thing, which I think people have talked about. And so, I mean, if I look at all the things that he taught us and that he meant to us, is that he was very, it was, you know, very clear on content. He was, he taught us editing. He taught us what quality was. And he taught us actually the themes and how to explore them. He made sure that the oral history documentation, Nimra, the team, and everybody was doing was on track, and that that quality was very important. And he felt that somewhere Lucknow mein wo kabhi kabhi wo kho gaya tha.
And I think it's these things he left with us forever. Of course, he edited 4 or 5 books. He was on our core team. He did hours and hours of work with Nasima Aziz, with Nimra on editing the books. He would somehow, it was his last innings, and somewhere I would feel that he would complain bitterly कि अब मुझे ये सब काम नहीं करना, and then he would do it all absolutely. And yeah, his favorites were kachori and mufali, as Nasreen has said. And I think chole bhatura was another one. But I think the 2 themes he enjoyed the most working on was, of course, Filmi Duniya Mein Awar. And I think we should end this evening with some of his favorite filmi ganas. He actually recorded many CDs for us, which have played in our festival and our shop for years on end. They're still playing with us. And I mean, he must have recorded at least 1,000 songs for us. I think as people know that whatever he did with a passion, whether it was his tortoise collection or his recording of Hindi film songs or the films that he had or the books that he had. And I think he did open everything to us, and it was a very different kind of team. It wasn't an academic circle. It was something on how to put all this out in general people in Lucknow, and how and उनको कैसे इस चीज को एक्सपोज करे और उनको भी बताएं कि एक और लखनऊ होता था और एक लखनऊ है भी. तो आई थिंक 2 चीजें जो आई फील कि मतलब उनकी हमसे बहुत शिकायत भी रहती थी, जो हम गलतियां करते थे. मतलब जब हम इवन सोशल मीडिया में गलतियां करते थे, वो अपना सिर पकड़ लेते थे. पर आई थिंक 2 चीजों से वो I feel कि हमने उनको खुश किया. वो था एक फिल्मी दुनिया में अवर, और दूसरी चीज की तो बेगम अख्तर की मजार. एंड आई थिंक मतलब हमको सबको एज अ टीम लगता है कि वो वादा जो हमने पूरा किया, जो उन्होंने बेगम अख्तर को दिया था. ये मैं आपको जस्ट 4-5 तस्वीरें हमारे मूड की और गैंग की दिखाना चाह रही हूँ, और सनत कदा की, just to end the evening. I want to just thank everyone on behalf of Anand, Sufi, Jamal, myself, and Askari. We all just want to thank you for being here, for making this day special. आपको बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. अगर आप में से कोई कुछ कहना चाहता है तो प्लीज जरूर.
Madhvi, I'm Rashida Appa.
Ji, Appa.
I just want to add that when you came to me to take this house on rent for Sanat Kada, but you for 2 days kept saying, I'll give you an answer, but you eventually had brought Saleem, and when he said, yes, that's the right space, did you agree to take it? Do you remember that?
Yes, Appa, we needed his yes always.
I know. I just wanted to say that. Miss him.
If anybody else would like to say little bits, anything.
So, am I audible?
G,
Hello?
you are. G, yes, you are.
So, thank you for organizing this, and it's really means a lot. And what I was making the point was that हम जैसे imagine करते हैं आज भी कि pride खत्म होता था और उस moment पर जो है सलीम खड़े रहते थे, तो हम हमेशा कहते थे queer movement के start भी लखनऊ के सलीम हैं और end भी उन्हीं का वही है, डेस्टिनेशन भी वही है, क्योंकि उनका होप उन्होंने जो हमें तैयार किया, बिकॉज वी ऑलवेज एक क्वेयर पर्सन, एज अ क्वेयर पर्सन आपको हमेशा एक इमेज का डर, आपको अपने ओल्ड एज का डर रहता है, आपको हमेशा एक
अपने
नहीं है, नहीं पनपा, क्योंकि
did very well. It was
sorry, Ritvik. I mean, it's really weird. But I just want to say that I think Saleem was one of the sole voices at one point who was out, and it's so important for us that there's so many people like Ritvik who were so inspired by.
Adi, can I just say one thing?
Yeah, yeah, Anand.
Hi. So I just want to end with this one anecdote. So Saleem and I and another friend of ours used to have a WhatsApp group between the three of us, and we thought we were the only three queer people who would get along with each other at that point in time, and we called it the Lucknow Queens. And we asked Saleem, and we used to call him Chacha, tumhari kya rai hai? So he said, "You guys are upstart queens. I'm an empress." So I think that sort of sums up the subtleness of his also humor, when it came to his queerness and everything. So I think that way of describing himself, it was really funny, and that's what Saleem was to all of us in this city.
In many ways, Saleem showed his love by getting angry with people whom he loved. And Anand, Sufi, Madhvi especially, was so much, he was so intimate, and it's very difficult. I mean, Saleem and Madhvi epitomize Saleem's relationship in many ways. Hated to love you and he loved to hate you.
Yeah. इश्क और फिर नफरत दोनों साथ साथ चलते, not नफरत, गुस्सा. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much and खुदा हाफिज. और लखनऊ
जहाँ भी है, सलीम would be saying कि देखो माधवी को ऐसे करना था, वैसे करना था.
हम बहुत घबरा रहे थे.
He must be eye rolling away.
Anyway, all of you give us the thumbs up to him, because then he'll say कि ठीक है, this event was okay. But the Sanat Kada's always there, and our new future bioscope, and all of you are always welcome there. I know that Lucknow is empty for many people without Saleem to go to, और Saleem के घर ना जाने पे मगर सूफी है और खबरुनिसा दैट्स आनंद और सनत कदा है और बायोस्कोप है. आप लोग प्लीज आते रहिए और सलीम की याद एक जिम्मेदारी हमको दी है उन्होंने. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया everyone for staying so late and for making this day little easier for all of us.